Hi everybody, I'm Susie Krabacher here in Woody Creek, Colorado, just outside of Aspen. I wanted to share with you today the most touching story I've heard in a long time. I heard it at church on Sunday and got the opportunity to sort of implement it into my week this week. This is from a New York cab driver who writes, "I arrived at the address and honked the horn. After waiting a few minutes, I honked again. Since this was going to be my last ride of my shift, I thought about just driving away. But instead I put the car in park and I walked up to the door and knocked. Just a minute," said a frail, elderly voice. I could hear something being dragged across the floor. After a long pause, the door opened. A small woman in her 90s stood before me. She was wearing a print dress and a little pillbox hat with a veil pinned on it, like somebody out of a 1940s movie. By her side was a small nylon suitcase. The apartment looked as if no one had lived in it for years. All the furniture had been covered with sheets. There were no clocks on the walls, no pictures, no knickknacks on the counters. In the corner was a cardboard box filled with photos, glassware, and trophies. "Would you carry my bag out to the car?" she said. I took the suitcase to the cab, then returned to assist the old woman. She took my arm and we walked slowly towards the curb. She kept thanking me for my kindness. It's nothing," I told her. "I just try to treat all my passengers like I would want somebody to treat my mom." "Oh, you're such a good boy," she said. When we got in the cab, she gave me an address and then asked, "Could you drive me through downtown on the way?" "Well, it's not the shortest way," I said. "Oh, I don't mind." She said, "I'm in no hurry. I'm on my way to a hospice, you see." I looked in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were glistening. "I don't have any family left," she continued in a soft voice. "The doctor says I don't have very long." I quietly reached over and shut off the meter. "What route would you like me to take, dear?" I asked. For the next 2 hours, we drove through the city. She showed me the building where she once worked as an elevator operator. We drove through the neighborhood where she and her husband had lived when they were just newlyweds. She had me pull up in front of an old furniture warehouse that had once been a ballroom where she danced as a young girl. Sometimes she'd ask me to slow in front of a particular building or corner and would just sit staring and said nothing. As the evening advanced, she said, "I'm tired, let's go now." We drove in silence to the address she'd given me. It was a low building, something like a convalescent home, with a driveway that passed under a portico. 2 orderlies came out to the cab as soon as we pulled up. They were solicitous and intent, watching her every move. They must have been expecting her. I opened the trunk and took the small suitcase to the door. The woman was already seated in her wheelchair. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching for her purse. "Nothing," I said. "But you've got to make a living," she said. "There'll be other passengers," I responded. Almost without thinking, I bent and I gave her a hug. She held onto me very tightly. "You gave an old woman a little moment of joy," she said. "Thank you so much." I squeezed her hand, turned around and walked back to my taxi. Behind me, a door shut. It was the sound of the closing of a life. I didn't pick up any more passengers that shift. For the rest of that night, I drove aimlessly. I couldn't hardly talk. What if the woman had gotten an angry cab driver, or one who was very impatient and wanted just to end his shift? What if I had refused to take the run, or had honked only once and then driven away? On a quick review, I don't think that I have ever done anything more important in my life. So, I wanted to talk to you about patience. It is one of the greatest assets any human being could possess, I think. I went to the hair salon yesterday and I was for 2 days wearing a cap because I was really upset. My hair wasn't doing anything right. I couldn't feel like I was had time to go to the hairdresser, so I was in a hurry. I showed up and I was complaining about, the time, I've got to get out of here, so let's do this quick. Can you make my hair look nice? I'm really having a bad day. I want to feel pretty. I've got this vlog to do, and could we just hurry? So she goes on and she starts talking about her day and her son, and I'm looking at my watch, And in through the front door comes a woman, very, very beautiful woman, quite stunning. I looked up at her, she got my attention. She slowly walked over to the chair, and the other hairdresser sat her down and rubbed her shoulders and asked her how she was doing and said, "Hey, are you doing okay? You look really good today. How's the chemo going?" And I did a second take, and she said, "Well, my doctor says that I'm tolerating the chemo and the radiation better than anybody he's ever seen." And then she slowly unwrapped her headdress, and she revealed her head that was almost bald. And all of a sudden, she looked around at all of us who were getting our long hair blown out and styled, and she just put her hands in her head in her hands, and she wept. And I thought to myself, I don't know this woman, but I wonder what she would think if the first thing that I thought when I saw her was how beautiful she is. You never know what perspective people have on you or who you are, or what, you just never know. So I went over to her and I sat on a bench beside her, and I didn't say anything. I just wanted to hear the rest of her story. She'd been in chemo for 2 months, and her doctor had said that she had gone through the chemo better than anyone that he'd ever seen. But she was once, in her mind, a beautiful woman. And I was in such a hurry, needed to get to an appointment, and I thought to myself, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, if I could just get this woman to laugh. I go out to my car, and I get my little 6-pack of Chihuahuas, and I bring them in, and I sat with her and let my Chihuahuas jump all over, and I got to hear the woman's story of her life. She was a beauty queen in Aspen, and her hair, having been gone, made her feel like she had lost her beauty, her identity. And as we sat there talking, I said, I want to let you know, the first thing I thought about you when you walked in the door was how beautiful you are. So I think it's really important that if you've got a kind word to say to somebody, this woman came in, tried to put on a brave show, and thought that she was ugly. She happened to be one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen. It doesn't hurt every now and then to share what you think of someone, especially if it's something beautiful. Thank you so much, and I hope you join this blog, and if you do, we'll see you next time. Thank you.